You spray every week, spend $200 per season, walk out Sunday morning and still see fresh holes in half your tomatoes, while my Amish neighbor in Holmes County, Ohio spent $18 once in 2005 and hasn't seen a beetle, aphid, or worm since. I asked him why at sunrise last July, standing in his potato patch where 200 plants had zero damage. His answer made me understand why a $64 billion industry needs you to never hear this. The grass was still wet, cold enough I could see my breath. Eli's boots, cracked leather tied with wire, didn't make a sound on the soil. He walked me to the edge of his plot and pointed down. Thin copper strips, maybe 2 inches wide, pushed into the dirt around each plant base with just the top edge showing. That's it. Same copper, 19 years. I crouched down expecting to find at least a few beetles. Nothing. Not one orange egg. Not one black larva. I checked 12 plants before I believed it. I waited for the complicated part. The special treatment. He pointed at the copper. That's it. 2 words. 19 years. Nothing else. Cornell University measured this exact method in 1994. 96% pest reduction. Not 40, not 60, 96. Between 1,922 and 1,941, this technique appeared in 47 official U.S. Department of Agriculture extension bulletins. Then, in 1947, not a single mention. It didn't fail. It didn't get debunked. It just vanished. Before this video ends, I'm going to show you a field report buried in the Penn State archives from 1923. A county agent named H.R. Shoemaker documented a farmer outside Intercourse, Pennsylvania, who used copper and zinc for 40 years with zero pest damage. And buried in that report is a 4-corner technique involving clay pots that I've never seen in any modern book, something that made the copper work twice as well. You are not a homeowner in this system. You are a subscription. But physics doesn't care what they're selling. Let me show you what they're not telling you. Here's what you're actually paying. Not just money, time. Last season, you bought organic pesticide 3 times. $15 a bottle. The aphids came back in 2 weeks, so you bought neem. Then beetles showed up, so you grabbed diatomaceous earth and pyrethrin spray. Another $38. You're at $102 before you count the tomatoes you lost. Do that for 10 years, that's $1,020. 25 years, that's $2,550. Just on sprays that stop working. Every Sunday morning, you're out there for 40 minutes with the pump sprayer. That's 35 hours per season. 10 years, 350 hours, 2 full weeks of your life spraying things that don't work on bugs that come back. And you still lost 30 tomatoes to hornworms last August. Think about the last time you walked out and saw fresh damage, holes that weren't there yesterday. You crouch down, turn over a leaf and see them. Again, your breath catches. Not panic, not anger, something between giving up and wanting to burn the whole garden down. I know that feeling. I lived it for 6 years. 6 summers of squash bugs winning. Everything I tried failed the same way. The system you're in doesn't fix the problem. It manages your dependency. Every bottle works a little less than the last one, because the bugs adapted. Next year you'll buy the new formula, the stronger one, until it doesn't work either. Here's what nobody tells you. Your grandparents weren't better gardeners. They just knew the things someone decided you shouldn't learn. Information that was in every extension bulletin, every farming manual printed before 1947. And then it wasn't. You're not failing at gardening. You're succeeding perfectly at the only version they still teach. The version where you need them. Every spring, every season, every week. What if the problem you think you have isn't actually the problem? The answer isn't new. It's older than your great-grandparents. The Romans knew. We have records from 200 AD describing copper bands around olive tree roots to prevent insect damage. Pliny the Elder documented it in Natural History Book 70I. Swiss farmers in the Palatinate region used copper and zinc together starting in the 1680s. They called it Spannungsfeld. Tension field. Church records from 1697 mention it because of a metal theft dispute. The method was common enough that everyone knew what they were for. The Amish brought it to America in the 1700s. By the 1860s, it was standard practice on every plain farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, Holmes County, Ohio, and across Indiana. Then it entered the official record. Between 1,922 and 1,941, the USDA published 47 extension bulletins mentioning copper and zinc barriers for pest control. A horticulture librarian at Cornell pulled the records for me last year. 47 documents. Dates, titles, bulletin numbers. After 1947, zero. Not one mention in any USDA publication, any extension guide, any land-grant university manual. It didn't fade. It dropped off a cliff. I'm standing in Holmes County, Ohio on a Tuesday in March watching a man named Amish Blacksmith, 65, white beard down to his chest, show me the copper strips his father installed in 1978. Same copper, 46 years. He bends down and brushes dirt off the top edge. The metal's turned green from oxidation, but it's still there. Still working. He says, the English think pest control is about killing. We think it's about making the plant strong enough, the bug has no interest. The sun was warming the air. I could smell wood smoke from his forge 50 yards away. I kept waiting for the complicated part. He pointed at the copper. That's it. I had a notebook full of questions. I didn't ask a single one. Standing there looking at a vegetable garden that hasn't been sprayed in half a century with zero pest problems, the questions felt stupid. It works. That's the whole story. But it's not the whole story. In 1994, Cornell published a controlled study on copper barriers for slug control. Department of Entomology, peer-reviewed. 96% reduction in slug damage. Journal of Economic Entomology, Volume 87, Issue 3. Auburn University did a soil study in 2008. They weren't studying pest control, just measuring microbial activity. But they noted beds with copper and zinc showed 37% higher microbial activity and dramatically reduced pest pressure. They couldn't fully explain it. Something was happening in the root zone that traditional entomology didn't account for. Ohio State followed up in 2016. They found 22% higher lignin in gardens using copper zinc versus chemical controls. Pest incidents down 41% over the season. And here's the part that should have made headlines. The effect compounded year over year. The longer the metals stayed in place, the better the results got. Pesticides do the opposite. They get worse every year. Because bugs adapt. You're on a treadmill running uphill every season. The Amish system runs downhill. Gets easier. I didn't believe Amos at first. I thought there had to be something else. So I asked him straight what else. He looked at me like I'd asked what else you need besides water to make ice. Brother, he said, physics doesn't care if you believe it. Physics doesn't care what they stop printing. Here's how it works. Copper stops crawlers. Zinc disrupts flyers. Most crawling insects carry a slight electrical charge in their bodies. When they touch copper in contact with moist soil, it creates a galvanic reaction. Tiny electrical current. Not enough to hurt them. Just enough to feel wrong. Think about touching your tongue to a 9-volt battery. That metallic sting. Bugs get the same sensation crossing copper and wet dirt. They don't die. They turn around. Slugs have it worst. Their slime is basically a liquid electrolyte. Copper plus slime equals instant current. Cornell measured this. Slugs touch the barrier reverse direction within 2 seconds. 96% never tried again. Beetles, ants, earwigs, same mechanism, weaker reaction. But strong enough they avoid it. They'll walk 10 feet around a copper strip rather than cross 2 inches. Now zinc. Different job. When zinc and copper sit in wet soil, they form a battery. Same principle as a car battery, 2 different metals, moisture between them, electrical current, except this battery is huge. Your whole garden bed, and the voltage is so weak you can't feel it, but bugs can. Flying insects use electrical fields to navigate. When they descend to lay eggs, they sense that field and interpret it as wrong place. Auburn documented this in 2008 without meaning to. They kept noting moth activity was significantly lower in beds with dual metals. They just recorded what they saw. Here's the deeper piece. Both metals are essential micronutrients. Copper enables photosynthesis and builds lignin, the compound making plant cell walls thick enough to resist chewing. Zinc drives enzyme function and produces auxin, the hormone controlling root growth. In wet soil, they slowly release ionic forms into the root zone, micrograms. Nothing toxic, but over a growing season, plants pull in exactly the trace minerals they need to build tougher cell walls and stronger roots. Bugs can sense weak plants. That's why pests hit the sickliest tomato first. Stressed plants emit chemical signals that say, "I'm vulnerable." Strong plants with high lignin don't emit those signals. Most pest species fly right past them. The metals do two things at once. They create a physical barrier bugs won't cross, and they slowly build plants bugs don't want to eat. Ohio State measured this. Plants in copper zinc beds had 41% fewer pest incidents, but those plants also had 22% more lignin. The metals weren't just blocking bugs, they were making plants chemically unappealing. Pesticides kill bugs, but don't make your plant stronger, don't improve soil, don't compound. Every year you start from zero while bugs get more resistant. Treadmill running uphill. The Amish system runs downhill. Gets easier every season. Physics doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care what's profitable. It just works. The chemistry is simple. The question is, why did nobody tell you? Let's talk about what happened in 1945. That's the year DDT hit the American market. Developed during World War II for protecting troops from mosquito-borne diseases. The war ended. Chemical companies had factories, supply chains, patents, and no enemy to spray, so they pivoted to agriculture. It worked. Killed everything. Farmers saw immediate results. The USDA saw a miracle. Chemical companies saw a market worth billions. Here's the timeline. 1,945 DDT goes commercial. 1,946 USDA shifts extension funding toward chemical pest control research. 1,947. The last mention of copper-zinc barriers appears in official U.S. agricultural publications. Not banned, not debunked, just stopped being printed. I found this in the Penn State Archives, 20 miles from Lancaster County, where the Amish were still using it. A field report by County Extension Agent H.R. Shoemaker in 1923. He visited a farm outside Intercourse, Pennsylvania. The farmer, Brother Yoder, had used copper and zinc in his vegetable plots for 4 decades. Shoemaker measured the results. 0 pest damage on cabbage, 0 on potatoes, 0 on cucumbers. He wrote, "Further study recommended." That study never came. By the time someone might have followed up, the funding had moved. The USDA wasn't interested in free solutions that lasted 40 years. They were interested in solutions you had to buy again next season. Who was pushing this? Let's name them. Dow Chemical, Monsanto, DuPont, BASF. Between 1,946 and 1,955, these 4 companies spent $83 million, $900 million today lobbying agricultural boards and funding university research departments. They didn't bribe anyone. They just made it very profitable to study chemicals and very unprofitable to study anything else. If your research department wanted funding, you studied chemical pest control. If you wanted to publish, you published about chemicals. Copper and zinc didn't fit that model. You can't patent copper. You can't trademark a galvanized nail. Farmers buy them once and use them for decades. There's no subscription, no annual purchase. You are not a homeowner in this system. You are a subscription. The pattern repeats. Glyphosate resistance in the 90s, Monsanto develops Roundup-resistant crops so you spray more. Neonicotinoids kill bees, Bayer fights the EU ban for 15 years. Every time a pesticide fails, the solution is always a new pesticide. Because the business model isn't solving your pest problem, it's managing your dependency. A 1,938 USDA bulletin, I have a photocopy, lists copper barriers as effective and economical for long-term garden pest management. 9 years later, DDT launches, and by 1950, not a single mention remains, not because it stopped working, because a solution that lasts 40 years is a nightmare for a company selling bottles every spring. They sell you the problem and the solution in the same aisle. Aisle 7 has the pesticides that create resistance. Aisle 8 has the new improved formula to fight the resistance you just created. You are not meant to solve the problem. You are meant to manage it forever. The Amish kept using copper and zinc because they don't read Better Homes and Gardens. They don't watch gardening shows. They pass knowledge from father to son, grandmother to granddaughter, exactly as it was taught in 1700. And while American agriculture spent 70 years chasing pesticides, watching each one lose effectiveness as insects evolved resistance, the Amish were pulling perfect harvests with 2 metals and a hammer. It was not buried because it failed. It was buried because it worked. A customer who solves their problem permanently is a customer you lose forever. That's not conspiracy. That's just math. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every ad for a new pesticide, every article about this season's biggest pest threat, every breakthrough formula, they're not solving your problem, they're renewing your subscription. But soil doesn't read marketing copy, copper doesn't expire, physics doesn't care what's profitable. You don't need their permission. You just need to know how, and this part is for you. If you think this only works for people starting fresh, this section is for you. You don't rip up your beds, you don't start over. Here's what you need. Prices as of right now: copper flashing, 6 inches wide, any hardware store, $18 for a 10-foot roll, galvanized roofing nails, $3 for a box. You'll use maybe 20. For the 4-corner method from that 1,923 report, 4 small terracotta pots, $1 each, 4 pennies minted before 1982, real copper, not copper-plated zinc. Check your change jar. Total cost $25. No subscription. No reorder. Here's how you install it. Step 1. Cut the copper flashing into strips, 2 inches wide, 8 inches long. Kitchen shears work fine. For a 10-foot bed, make about 10 strips. Step 2. Push them vertically into the soil around your bed perimeter, straight down. Depth: 1 to 1.5 inches. Critical: only a ½ inch should show above the surface. Space them 12 inches apart. Why vertical? The galvanic reaction requires continuous contact with soil moisture. A strip lying flat on mulch does nothing. You can retrofit an entire bed in under 10 minutes. I timed it. Step 3. Hammer galvanized nails into your existing stakes, tomato cages, fence posts, 4 to 5 nails per stake. Height above ground 6 inches minimum, 3 feet maximum. Ideal height is knee height. That's the elevation where flying insects make their final approach and the electromagnetic disturbance is strongest. Step 4. The 4-corner system. The thing Shoemaker documented in 1923 that disappeared from every book after 1947. Dig 4 small holes at the 4 corners of your garden. Bury the terracotta pots, rim flush with soil. Inside each pot, place 1 pre, 1 9/8 2-penny, and 1 galvanized nail. Fill the pot to the top with rainwater, not tap water, rainwater. It's slightly acidic, which dissolves trace copper and zinc ions better. Refill when they evaporate. That's the only maintenance. Here's why this works. The terracotta is porous. As water sits in the pot, trace copper and zinc ions dissolve. Capillary action pulls those ions outward through the soil in a circular pattern. 4 pots at 4 corners creates overlapping circles. A distributed ionic field. Plants inside that field show measurably higher systemic resistance to pests and disease. A retired Penn State soil chemist explained it. The 4-corner system creates a micronutrient gradient. Plants within that gradient have sufficient copper and zinc at the root level to build stronger cell walls. That's not magic. That's plant nutrition done the way it was done for 2,000 years. This isn't in any gardening book printed since 1950. It exists in one place. A typewritten field report in an archive box that almost nobody has looked at in 100 years. And in the oral tradition of a few dozen Amish families. Timeline of what you'll see. Week 1, not much. Week 2, slug damage drops close to 0. Week 4, aphid populations collapse because the ants that farm them stop crossing the copper. Week 6, cabbage moths start hitting your neighbor's garden instead of yours. End of the first season, you'll wonder how you garden without it. Remember those 6 years I mentioned? Here's what ended them. Last year, I tried this in my own garden in Ohio. I've been fighting squash bugs for 6 years. I've tried neem oil, diatomaceous earth, hand-picking row covers, companion planting. Nothing worked for more than a week. I installed the copper strips and zinc stakes in late April, 4 corner pots in early May. By July, I had 0 squash bugs. Not fewer, zero. I walked the rows every morning expecting to find them. They never came. My zucchini grew clean into August. I gave away 30 pounds, $25, one Saturday. 6 years of failure solved. $25 buys you 40 years of freedom, or 1 month of dependency. Choose. Not because I got smarter, because I stopped playing a game designed for me to lose. Brother Yoder's four-corner system wasn't superstition. It was precision. He understood that soil needs micronutrients and bugs avoid electrical gradients. He didn't need a PhD. He needed copper, zinc, rainwater, and 40 years of clean harvests to prove it worked. This isn't theory. This is Amos in Holmes County pulling potatoes his father planted in soil protected by the same copper strips installed in 1978. This is Mary in Holmes County who used to walk her garden rows every morning with a jar of soapy water hand-picking squash bugs off 50 plants. 15 years of that. 3 months after installing copper strips, the jar stayed empty. She stopped bringing it. This is physics that's been working since before America existed. This technique has existed for over 200 years in Amish communities. Longer if you count the Swiss and the Romans. The USDA knew. They published it 47 times between 1922 and 1941. Then chemical companies found a market worth billions and the publications stopped. Not because copper and zinc stopped working, because they worked too well. A solution you buy once and use for decades is the opposite of a profitable product. So they buried it. Not with lies, with silence. They just stopped printing it, stopped teaching it. They didn't bury it because it failed. They buried it because it worked. And a customer who solves their problem permanently is a customer they lose forever. If you're the kind of person who believes your grandparents weren't luckier, they just knew things, someone decided not to teach you, and if you look at that spray bottle and realize you're not buying a product, you're renting a solution you'll never own, then you already know what to do next. Leave your state and the one pest that's driven you craziest in the last 3 years in the comments. I read every single one. The next video goes deep into specific pest species, Colorado, potato beetles, cabbage moths, squash vine borers, and the exact Amish responses for each. Specific metals, specific placements, specific plants that amplify the effect. Because copper and zinc are just the foundation. There's an entire system of suppressed agricultural knowledge still alive in Lancaster County and Holmes County. I'm pulling it out, piece by piece. What I'm sharing next makes the two-metal system look like the opening chapter. There's a reason Amish gardens in the pesticide era still look identical to 1,890, and when you understand that reason, you'll realize this video, everything you just learned, is just the warm-up. This is a movement of people taking back what was taken from us, one forgotten technique at a time. And you're already part of it.